Hello friends, this is Tanya with another video for Trinity Stamps. Today I am playing with Slimline Foliage. We're going to play with our leafy greens. I'm going to start out with this shimmering powder from Nouveau, and it's called Falling Leaves. And my goal was to make a background panel, or a couple of background panels, with a watercolory green background. So I started out with just plain white cardstock, 2 panels that are 4 by 9 inch, and I scattered the shimmer powder all over the paper and spritzed it with my water bottle, and did it again after I heat set it, and then decided I wanted to pick up all the stray bits on the cutting mat and sprinkled a little more shimmer powder onto the mat, and then finally got what I wanted. Next, I took some actual green cardstock and went straight to the smooshing method on the cutting mat. And that gave me a different but equally pleasing look. Now I do need both sets of these papers because we're going to make 2 different cards. Then, so I don't waste any of the ink that I had on the cutting mat, I decided to use my brayer and put it on a piece of scratch paper. We don't actually use that, but that's okay. Thought you might find that interesting. Now I'm going to take all 4 of those panels. I'm going to die cut them with the foliage frame die that cuts a cuts a slimline sized frame for a card. Now I do need 2 of these for each of the cards that we're going to make, and I'm just using a pokey tool to push out any of the extra chads. And we've got 2 lighter and 2 darker, and we're going to layer the lighter on top of the darker. Now for the slimline card, it's as simple as gluing one on top of the other, and I just rotate the frames so that they are not overlapping. And for the A2 size card, so that's 4 by 5 1/4, that's what this panel is. And well, actually the first panel was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I decided to use the modern embossed rectangle dies to trim it down because I wanted a little bit of white showing around the outside of this card when I glued it to the card front. And then I trim those frames apart so that they're going to fit on the front of the card. And I'm going to piece them together. And about here, I'm going to realize that I didn't do the step that I was planning on doing. You're going to see me try to peel that off. Yeah, it doesn't work. That's good glue. So I just had a c'est la vie moment. We're going to move on. I am not making these frames all over again, because to be honest, I got up at the crack of dawn because I was awake. I get up at 4 a.m. for my job, and this was my day off, and I just needed to get crafting. I wanted to get things done early in the day. Turns out my son and his wife and my grandson ended up coming by that afternoon and spending the weekend with us. So it's a really good thing I just got up and got busy. Now I've put the second layer on, the lighter layer on top. There is a little bit of a gap on the top and bottom, but you really can't tell. It blends in so well. So this is what I intended to do for both cards. I'm taking the Slimline Woodsy background stamp, and I'm stamping that on I think this is a 4 by 9 inch panel of white cardstock. I'm using some Versamark. And I did treat the cardstock with a anti-static powder tool before I started, and then I swept away the extra with my brush. And now I'm going to heat emboss it with white satin pearl embossing powder. It is my favorite way to add some texture or a little bit of an image in the background. Look at that. I just love that shimmer. Heat embossing is still magical to me, and I love wood grain. So that was perfect. I think it goes wonderfully with this foliage frame. So we're going to glue that just exactly right on top of this panel after I trimmed it down to 8 1/2 by 3 1/2. And then I'm going to take some iridescent metallic paper, and I'm going to use the Beary Special Sentiments dies. I'm cutting out the Wishing You a Special Day. And I did save the little tittles for the eyes in the paper that I die cut it from, so I can add them later, like shortly. And I carefully apply those directly to that heat embossed background. Now I'm just going to poke out the 2 tittles that I need for wishing, and I'm going to put a dot of glue above each of those, and then I'm going to use my wax pencil here to pick those up and put them directly into the glue. And my aim wasn't so great with the second one, so I have to nudge it with my pokey tool. Next, I'm going to put the U on, and I'm just making sure the amount of space before the sentiment and after are the same. Now inside the card, we're going to glue this rest of the sentiment. Again, just using that fine tip glue. And I started by laying them out so I can get the spacing correct. And put the center word down first, and then I add the other 2 sentiment components on each side. And you see me pushing them down with the heel of my hand because odds are I don't have ink on the heel of my hand. And then I won't be transferring anything where I don't want it. And we're going to do the same thing with the tittle for the special eye. Just going to push that in and make sure it is well adhered before I close this card in order to put the front on. And we're going to keep this one pretty simple. This would work for a man or a woman, someone younger or older. It just has a very fresh and springy feeling to it. I'm just squaring up those edges against the edges of the card base. Now, with the foliage frame die set, there are a bunch of dies that cut out different floral images and some extra foliage. So I took those and I used just the flower dies, and they are layered. So this little tulip has these stamens that stick out, and I thought that the whole swoosh of them was too much, so I just broke them in half. And I'm taking the different elements and I'm layering them together to make a bunch of flowers to scatter all over the front of this card. Bet you didn't even realize that that the foliage frames has all of these extra pieces. So I laid them out, and now I'm just gluing down the last 3, and I used the Baubles in Luminous Lemon and Captivating Cantaloupe to create the centers. Then I pulled out the Slimline Bunnies stamp set and the Slimline, what is that one called? Stitched strips. Now I used that to cut a sentiment strip. I used one of the stitched ones, and I'm taking a sentiment from the Slimline Bunnies that says just hopping by to say hi, or maybe it says hopping by to say hi. There we go. And I used some Versamark to heat emboss that sentiment in gold. And then I'm going to trim that down to about 3.5 inches. And I'm going to add a bunny from the Slimline Bunnies that I had already colored, and I had just sitting in a little container on my desk needing a new home, and it found its home. I had colored that, right when all of these springy, with the March release, that's when. Just going to dovetail those ends, and I'm going to adhere the bunny with a little bit of coaster blank behind him. I'm going to add a little coaster blank to that sentiment to make it flush with all of the other pieces of this card front, and then I'm going to tack it down below the bunny. I think this turned out perfect, especially since I was winging it, and I think that the woodsy background would still have looked beautiful behind that bunny, but I don't think you'll miss it. Which of these cards do you like better? Are you getting tired of seeing all the slimlines, or are you totally obsessed with slimline cards like the rest of us? Because it's just fun to have something new, and there are so many products that are geared towards slimline. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and click that subscription button, and here are a couple of videos that you might enjoy in the future. As always, there are links in the description box below to all of the products I've used. Until next time, bye-bye.